Hey traders, this is Blake Morrow with Traders Summit, and I'm excited to bring you once again Dick Matthews of GC Partners. How are you, Dick?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy Friday to you. It's always these are some of the funnest videos for me to do, and this is our Tales from the Trading Desk series, and having you here and hearing some of these stories that need to be told and not forgotten. I'm excited to do them with you.
Great. I feel quite prehistoric, I must say.
Well, going back to our last conversation, we were going to introduce or talk about how technology was introduced into the industry, because obviously when you started in the industry, you used your pen and pad of paper and other things. So
this was the technology we had, a pencil and a book.
That was it. And especially if you were a technical guy, I mean, who knows what you guys did? You probably drew on napkins.
Yeah. But in actual fact, there wasn't that much technical analysis then.
Yeah, it was probably a lot of heebie-jeebie, wizardry stuff. But that's interesting. I don't want to take away from your story, but going back to even when I started in the business in the mid 90s, I remember when I started as a stockbroker, I started in front of a Quotron, and there was four of us that we shared a Quotron. We used to, shift it so we could see quotes, and then, somebody else is looking at it, and we'd write out tickets that get run over to the ticket window. But even before that, there's 20 years before that. So how was it like, and when did it all start for you?
It's really interesting now, sitting towards the end of my career with a great future behind me as opposed to a great future in front of me. Looking back, I'm now doing a 3-day week. Like a lot of people are doing 3 days at home and 2 days in the office. But way back, and looking right the way back to when I first started in 74, we had a thing called the 3-day week in the UK. Now, Americans probably don't know about this unless you've been watching The Crown.
Yeah. That's where my British education comes from, by the way. So,
and the Conservative government at the time and the miners were constantly loggerheads about pay rises and whatever. And the miners really, or the trade unions actually, were incredibly important in the UK at that time. And it got to a point where the miners went on strike. And we had no electricity in the afternoons. We only worked 3 days a week because we had no electricity beyond that. And
wow.
So by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, everything was dark. In the winter in London, it's dark at 3. And so we were actually working with candles and paraffin lamps that you'd have on camping as our lighting. But
wow.
The great thing is, it didn't affect us. We didn't have any technology that was affected. Right?
That's amazing.
We didn't have TVs. We didn't have a TV screen. There was no rolling news. There was no Sky News, CNN, Fox, or anything. We had. I might be wrong, but I think we had 3 TV channels: BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV, and that was it until late 70s. And they stopped broadcasting at midnight and didn't start till 6 in the morning. And another thing you probably don't see on The Crown, they used to play the national anthem at midnight. When the TV stations stopped, which is, my dad used to stand up and salute.
Of course.
But something like that now, if you had no electricity in a dealing room, you'd just go home. You couldn't do it.
Right.
So I can work from home now. I can be doing this with you without electricity and Zoom and all the modern things. So it's really amazing how that just has changed.
That is amazing. So tell me, how did you get quotes? I mean, how did you know where the market was at all times? And there's got to be, and I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt, but there's got to be like arbitrage opportunities when quotes could be so variable, I'm assuming.
Yeah, absolutely. There were, I can't remember the number of banks, but there were hundreds of banks in London at the time, all trading, small or large or whatever. And we would go probably to the big 5 first thing in the morning, and we'd say, what are you looking to do? What do you think the rates are on blah, 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 blah? And they'd give us an idea. And between the 5 banks, we'd narrow the market down and we'd get a bid offer. And we would just go round quoting that price until we got hit on that price and found out it was the wrong price. And banks were arbitraging us, and we were looking, we'd have, and this is no disrespect to the bank, Ray Brothers, who were a bit slower than maybe National Westminster was. So we'd have an arbitrage opportunity there, and we would put a bank in the middle and say, here's a few points for you. There's an opportunity for you to make some money, knowing that sooner or later we'd want a favor back. So there were some great opportunities there.
That's amazing. I can't even imagine. I mean, I couldn't even imagine how that worked on that type of level and those amounts of monies that you were trading. So let's go back to technology a little bit. So first you were pen and paper, guys running orders, trying to get executed on prices. How did it evolve from there?
So first up after that, I guess the two most important bits of technology, or three most important bits of technology, calculators started to come in. So you could actually work out forward prices as opposed to doing it longhand, and you could work out yields on certificates of deposits and forwards and things. Otherwise, you're doing it longhand and in your head.
That probably helped for hangovers, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it made prices a bit tighter as well. Until you got a calculator thrown at you, which occasionally happened. And then next up, Reuters started a page where we would put our prices up on that page. At the time, there were 26 money brokers in London. And so the banks could see all the different prices and they could compare between the prices. And we'd shave the price if we wanted to be aggressive or whatever. That happened in, I reckon, about 75. Someone will no doubt correct me when the first Reuters machines came in.
So how would you view that? Like, I know Reuters did it, but how did you, as I guess at that point in time, you were with RP Martin?
Yeah.
Okay. So how would you know, like, that was the quote? I mean, because there was no internet, how did you know?
I really don't know how we got the feeds. We had a TV screen, and we'd have a page on that with Reuters prices. Got it. May well have. I've no idea how it was done, and we'd have selective access, so not everyone would be able to see these prices. So we might want to show Bank of America the price or Bankers Trust, but we might not want to show a smaller bank, and so it was it was an art in it, because at the time we were quoting prices and we were firm dealers on those prices. So we made a price, we dealt, and we had to deal.
It was almost like a live ECN quote, before there were ECNs. That's so interesting. Okay, so continue on.
So we'd have that, and then the next bit of technology, which was crucial to us, was a Telex machine. Now, no one will know what a Telex machine is, but it's like the size of a desk and a typewriter, and you would type into it and it would transmit it through a line or whatever to whoever you were typing to. And it used to have like a ticker tape running through it, which would print out the prices and whatever. I'm not describing it very well, but it was a dreadful job being on there because it was slow. So every time you put a price in, and we'd be talking, I remember particularly of SAMA, the Saudi Arabian Monetary Authority. So we'd be quoting them, and it's not someone you want to upset. And he knew as soon as he put the price in that the price had changed. And he'd sit there and he'd go, God, and he'd hear, and you'd know that the machine was going to start printing something back to you, because it had a nervous twitch before it printed back, yours or mine. And if you were miles out of the price, you just unplug it. And the phone would be ringing. So don't answer that phone, don't answer that phone. And eventually you'd answer the phone, say, missed it, sorry, put the phone down. I mean, that was the first internetish sort of machine that we had. And then obviously Reuters expanded, and charting machines came in with ADP, had a charting machine, Protron, TDG, all of this started to come in. And then fax machines were a great revolution as well.
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine.
And that was sort of like, to someone like me, a fax machine, I can't believe it. This is a joke, the first one I saw. Nothing like that can happen. And that became really important because you could deal very quickly, and you could send confirmations very quickly. And the poor guys, the old messengers, who were often retired footballers or whatever, and they were doing it literally for a few pennies in their hands, who used to run around the city with bits of paper confirming deals, all of a sudden started becoming redundant, which is really terribly sad.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how things changed. But we didn't have mobile phones, which I guess in a way was a blessing.
Sure.
Because I suspect there's all sorts of jiggery pokery goes on a mobile phone these days.
Yeah.
And we didn't have that to contend with. And we used to have open lines. We'd have an open line to New York, which was God knows how much that cost. I mean, it's thousands of pounds a month. It was literally a cable under the sea, which, but that's where the word cable for dollar sterling comes from, because it was a wire across the sea. And then we used to trade sterling against the Irish punt, which was the Irish currency before the euro, and that was known as the wire because it was the little cable. But it was literally called cable because there was a physical cable underneath the sea that we were trading on. I feel so old.
No, you know what, Dick? It's awesome because as a currency trader, you always hear, the sterling, it's called the cable, and it's a cable because it's a cable, the cable that ran underground between the US and the UK into New York. But to hear it from somebody who actually was there, who experienced it, I mean, that's, for me as a 20 plus year currency trader, it's cool to hear, so I think it's great. And I know we're going to continue this conversation. We're going to continue these conversations, but I want to ask you, from somebody who's seen the evolution of, where you started, pen to paper, to where we are today, and you hear other people, people that are a little bit older, whether they're in the financial industry or not, you hear people say, "Wow, things move so fast now." It's got to be really a very astonishing thing for you to have witnessed over your career.
Yeah, the speed of the markets now, and the speed of trading and confirmation, and your field is just amazing to me. But personally, looking back when I was on the open outcry markets, that was so quick and that was so efficient. I still think that's the most efficient way of doing business, was an open outcry. All this technology can't really replace that human emotion, although there was some hysterical times, which no doubt we'll come on to later on. But it is so fast these days.
And it's like, I think about like open outcry, and like the guys and gals that you talk to that have been on floors, which I've had very little experience being on a smaller trading floor, but being able to see people's emotions, and you're like, oh, I know that guy or gal is really panicked, or they really, really want to get long or get short based on what they're screaming and their inflections. You just can't see that in technology.
You can't see that. You can't get that.
You can.
And it's not like that was so obvious, because, being a broker, in my time, I ran, Refco on the floor, which is in London, which is one of the biggest brokerages houses going at the time. But we'd see Salomons using a local, or Bank of America using a local to do a trade, and he'd be buying openly in the market, but through us, he'd be selling. And so it's really interesting to see how orders were moved around, and we'd give orders out. We'd have an order as Refco, and we'd give it to Merrill Lynch to do for us because we wanted to disguise our hands. So it was like a huge three-dimensional game of chess. It was just like unbelievable. And it's, unless you've been there, it's really hard to explain, and the subtleties and watching people's faces, and I mean, there's some hysterical stories, and we'll come back to those. But just thinking about, you were saying about cable, and I remember that, and still even now, that London has dominated the foreign exchange markets for a long, long time. And most of the currencies had nicknames, and the amounts that we traded had nicknames, which came from Cockney and Cockney slang. And now when I talk to people, and it still sticks there, I'll still use, do you want a bag? which is 1,000, which slang is a bag of sand rhymes with 1,000. Yeah, and then we'd have names for currencies like the loonie. You know what the loonie is? You must
of
know.
course. Yeah.
And do you know why it's called the loonie?
But because of the bird?
That's it. It was on a Canadian dollar note. It was the
Yeah.
loonie. The yen was the bill and ben, and then there was the potato, which was the peseta, and so many of these currencies have just gone.
Right.
You know, which is really, really sad. But it was like a secret language that we had between each other. And the banks had nicknames, and you know, NatWest was always the wet monster, and you know, really funny things. And it's a language which I can still understand when I'm with my mates, and we'll still talk the same language, and we'll still use the same language for numbers. Like 3 is always a carpet, right? Because after 3 years as a prisoner, you used to get a carpet in your cell. So, you know, then nine was a triple carpet. It's just
that's hilarious.
So funny. And those are great things, and that's still there. But because the market's become so electronic, the voices have gone. The voice brokers have all but disappeared, and that was the characters and the fun bits. And these are in the days before you had to have a degree in building a space rocket or whatever to build some ridiculous
quant fund. Well, you know, Dick, you may say some of the faces have disappeared, but the stories are here to stay, and that's what these stories are, and what this series is going to be. You know, the tales from the trading desk. So I want to thank you so much for spending your time with not just myself, but with the trading community at large, and the guys and gals over that read and watch over at Traders Summit. It's wonderful, and I can't wait till our next meeting next weekend, where we get to hear some more stories. And if you guys want to hear more about Dick and GC Partners, he provides great analysis too. Make sure you go down to his link in the description of this video. Make sure you give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of these great interviews with Dick and other people too. And Dick, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Blake, have a great weekend. See you next week.
You do the same. We'll see you next weekend.
Cheers now. Bye.
Bye-bye.